Welcome to the sermon, Love God So Much. Mark 12:30 says, "And you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength." Right? So we talk about loving God with all our strength on our previous Sunday, and we talk about strength, and we talk about weakness. We talk about finding strength in God, and we read those verses that God says, my power works best in your weakness. So we talk about finding hope in the middle of our weakness. And we talk about loving God with our strength and also with our weakness. Because if His power works best in our weakness, then it's another way to love God. We can love God with our strength, and we can love God with our weakness. Uh, but we talk about strength in a physical term. So we talk about that the strength can be physical strength or mental strength. And from that, we talk that God is telling us, love me with all your strength. But what if it means something different? What if the meaning is not about my physical strength or my mental strength? What if it means something different? And what if we need to do something different instead of thinking about loving God with all our strength in that particular way? If we go to the Old Testament, where the commandment was first given, and we go to Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 5, it says, "And you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength." The interesting thing about this verse in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 5, is that the word for strength in the Hebrew, which was the original version for the Old Testament, is me'ot. And me'ot means, and me'ot, which is interesting, is used twice in the Bible with the translation of strength, just in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 5, and in 2 Kings 23 and 25. Just keep going. Yeah, there. And you can see in 2 Kings, we already read Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 5. And in 2 Kings, it says, "Never before had there been a king like Josiah, who turned to the Lord with all his heart and soul and strength, obeying all the laws of Moses." So those are the only two times in the Old Testament that the word me'ot is translated as strength, which is the word that we get in the New Testament when Jesus said, "Love me with all your strength." Those are the only two times. But that's not the only times that the word me'ot, the Hebrew word, is written in the Old Testament. There are multiple times, almost maybe 200 or more times, that the word me'ot is used in the Old Testament. But just twice, it's translated as strength, which caught my attention. And it's really interesting, because actually, 137 times, the word me'at is translated as very. 49 times the word is translated as greatly. And 40 times the word is translated as exceeding. So isn't that interesting that just the only two times that we see strength is in the commandment and another reference to the commandment? Other than that, the word doesn't mean that. And the interesting thing is that the word me'at in the Hebrew means muchness, abundance, exceedingly. And I thought about and I found that's fascinating. Because one thing is to love God with all my strength, and another thing is to love God exceedingly. One thing is to love God with all my weakness, and another thing is to love God in abundance. Those can mean two different things, depending on your situation and the place where you are right now. And mostly when we're talking about weakness, it may mean something different. And the second time that the word me'at is used in the Bible, the second time, starting in Genesis, is in chapter 4, verse 5. And it says, "But he did not accept Cain as his gift, This made Cain very angry." So very is me'at. And he looked dejected. So that's the second time in the Hebrew Bible, in the Old Testament, that word that we see as strength is used. And the first time that is used is in Genesis chapter 1, verse 31. And it says, "Then God looked over all he had made, and he saw that it was very good." It doesn't say strength good. Doesn't make sense. So as you can see in the Cain situation and then in God's situation, it's like you can use the word me'at, the one that is saying, "Love me with all your me'at." You can use it in a bad way, like Cain. He was very angry. Or you can use it in a good way, like God. He saw that everything was very good. So you have two alternatives to use the word, good way, bad way. The difference in God's request is that he's using before he says, "Love me, me'at." So he's kind of like saying, "Love me so much. Love me exceedingly. Love me in abundance." So it's different when we think about the word strength, because we were talking previous Sunday that sometimes we feel pretty good. So it's maybe easy to love God with all my strength. But when I'm weak, then it's hard to love God. But God says, it's okay, love me with all your weakness. But in this case, he's telling us, love me exceedingly. Love me so much. Love me in abundance. And you know what? And I was thinking, because the strength and weakness goes back and forth. It goes up and down. But abundance means abundance. So much means so much. Exceedingly means exceedingly. It's not based on your situation. It's not based on your feelings. It's not based on your circumstances. It's based on so much. It's always going to be more. Are you weak? Love me so much. Are you like you feel pretty good? Love me so much. Love me so much. Abundance always means more than enough. Love me more than enough. So at this point, we got to the point where like, okay, God, we understand that and we like it, you know? Because sometimes we don't know how to love God in the middle of our weakness. Sometimes we don't know how to love God in the middle of our strength. But what if God wasn't telling you that? What if God was telling you, love me so much? And there's a difference when you tell a person, I love you, and when you tell a person, I love you so much. It's normally not the same person. Normally not the same situation. Normally not the same contest. You know, I can tell you I love you, but if I tell you I love you so much, you'll be like, wait, what? And what if I use the other words, you know? Like you're walking in and say, hey, I love you in abundance. You'd be like, wait a minute, hey, take it easy. You know, you're not supposed to say that. It's against the law. Just kidding. But, you know, so you can see there's a difference between saying I love you than to say I love you so much. You know, there's something that is coming out of that. And you're saying that normally to people that you really love so much. People that you love exceedingly. People that you have so much love for them that you can do anything for them. And that's what you're telling them, you know what? I love you so much. You know, I can do anything for you. And God is telling you, love me. But don't just love me. Love me so much. It's not based on your strength. Now it's not based on your circumstances. Now it's not based on your weakness. Now it's based on your so much. And now we get to the point, okay, if God is telling us to love him so much, then what is love? What does it mean to love? You know? We need to start with that. Because if we want to do it in abundance, we need to know what do we need to do in abundance. You know? And I was thinking about 1 John chapter 4, verse 8. And it says, but anyone who does not love does not know God. For God is love. So, and I was thinking, what is love? If God is asking me to love him so much, then I need to understand what is love in the first place. You know? And then if we go to there are multiple references about love in the Bible. But I thought about this one because this one says God is love. The interesting thing about this verse is that when it says God is love, he is using two nouns. Normally what you use is a noun and an adjective. an adjective. You know, like this table is black. The table is a noun, black is an adjective. Because the table is actually not black. It's just a quality that the table has. But when you're using two nouns, that means something different. And in this particular verse, he's using a noun with another noun. God is a noun, and love is another noun. And normally we don't use that. We normally use adjectives to describe the noun, the person, or the thing. But in this case, they are combining two things, two definitions, two things come together, and they are saying this is this. And I was thinking about that. That's fascinating, you know, because it's like if I say Danny is Colombia, you know, it doesn't make sense. But if you think about that, it's like if Danny is Colombia, that means that Danny represents everything that Colombia is. And Colombia represents everything that Danny is. Whatever you're going to see in me, you're going to see in Colombia, because Danny is Colombia. If you go to Colombia, every mountain, every place, every person is going to look like Danny, because Danny is Colombia in that particular case. In this case, it's saying God is love. What does it mean? That means that God represents everything that love can be. And love represents everything that God is. Because there are two nouns connected together. In this case, it's not a description. It's not an adjective. It's not a characteristic of God that He is love. No, He is what love represents. He is love. In the sense that love as a thing, God is that thing. God represents that. Because He represents everything that love means. So what you see in God is love. What you can see in love is God. And then we go to verse 7. And it says, "Dear friends, let us continue to love one another, for love comes from God." It's like if I say again, Colombia comes from Danny. What does it mean? That somehow I created Colombia. I put Colombia together. Like everything that you see in Colombia is because I did it. You know, it was part of my plan to create Colombia. In this particular case, we're talking about that love comes from God. And why is that? Because He is the representation of what love is. He is love. Anything that is about love comes from God, because He is love. So whatever God created is coming from love, because God created also the definition of love. He is the source of love. So if God is telling me, love me so much, then who do I need to look at? To Him. Amen. Because He is love. Because He is the source of love. If I start looking at people, then I'm going to be disturbed by the definition of love that I have. If I look at my past, then my definition of love is going to be weird. If I look at the way the people treated me and the way I was raised and that kind of stuff, you can see some good signs of love, but then you can also see some tough love. And then you can also see some parts where you ask yourself, was that love? And then your definition of love is going to depend on the information that you have in your mind, depending on your past, depending on your situation, depending on what's happening, depending on your relationships, depending on what's going on in the world, depending on how you are interpreting the situations in the world. Depending on all that, you're going to base love in that way. And then when God tells you, love me so much, then you're going to be based on that definition of love that you have. You're going to try to love Him so much, and then you're going to find that is complicated. Because the definition of love that you may have is so, so gazy, you cannot even see that clear. How are you going to be able to love God so much if your definition of love is maybe so low than what God is asking you to do? Love comes from God. God is the source of love. And in that way, if we look at Him, if we see what He is doing, what He has done, and what He will do for me, and everything that He is doing right now in this particular moment, even in the midst of difficult situations, even in the midst of the world and all the things that are going on, even in the midst of our fears and our emotions and our good emotions and our bad emotions, even in the midst of these circumstances that I'm not understanding, if you can see what God is doing, then you can see what love means. If you can see that you are here and it's the result of what God has done in the past, then you can see what love is. And then you can understand how to love God and how to love God in abundance. And then you can also love one another in abundance, and we're going to go to that later. And then we come to chapter 4, verse 10, and it says, this is love. And that's basically the question that we're looking for. What is love? And 1 John chapter 4, verse 10 says, this is love. You want to know what it is? Okay, come here next Sunday. We're going to talk about that next Sunday. And let me tell you something. You can go and spoil it. You can go and spoil it. You can go and read chapter 4, verse 10. It's not going to be the same. You need to be here next Sunday. You can go and read it. I need to know, because there are some people that cannot wait to, I need to know what love is. And you can go and read it. It's not going to be the same. You need to be here next Sunday, But God tells you, love me so much. And he says, you are strong, you feel strong, love me so much. And he also tells you, you feel weak, love me so much. If you want to know about how to love God and how to love him so much, then look at him. Because he has loved you so much. We're going to talk about that in our next sermon. He has loved you so much. And we're going to go into details of what it means to love God and what it means to love him so much based on what Jesus did for us and what that represents to us. But I think the final verse and the final thing that God is telling you this morning is that he's telling you, I just don't want you to love me. I want you to love me so much. And if you don't know what love is, then look at me, because I have loved you so much. I just don't want you to love me. I want you to love me so much. God bless you.